Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the annual plan workshop of the 12th of February. We just some health and safety. If the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit and meet on Devonport Road down towards the Strand. Please make sure your mobile phones are off and one person at a time. And just a note, this is being streamed live on YouTube. Yeah, we're here to talk further around the annual plan and hand over to Councillor Baker if he could give us a opening karakia. Thank you.
Mauri ora te whare, kimi hia te pōranga haua te ao kia i o rangi, kia i o nuku, kei ngā mata o te ariki, kei mata nuku, kei mata rangi, ke reira koe e tāne te waiora. I ngā maunga rū e ngā wā parawhenua, he reuta ki tai ki tangoroa e, ko koe, ko au, ko tāua nei, whiti ao, whiti ora, ara mai te toki, haumi e hui e, tae ki e.
So just, we're missing Councillor Morris, Councillor Schooler.
Sorry, Councillor Schooler's online.
Oh, okay, sorry, online. I think Councillor Rolleston will be back shortly. Just making a note of that. We are in a workshop, so we don't need to have formal apologies, but that's what we're talking about today. Now, probably best we just go straight over to staff, and we can get into talking the numbers.
A little bit of an overview of the workshop and the elements that have been we're suggesting would be in open and enclosed. So on Tuesday you made a series of decisions around the annual plan, you set some parameters and some direction. This workshop picks up from that and starts to move us forward to have some discussions about some of the key elements that sat within the information you were provided in the resolutions that you made. So what we'd like to do today is to work through levels of service. So that's the first item we would like to proceed with because it would require some further work to be prepared by staff and reported back to you. That would need to be in public excluded. There are a number of matters in there that would relate directly to staff, contractors and suppliers. So at this point, it's not something that should be discussed in open, but once we move to the next stage, it absolutely would be no decisions, and then we could then move forward with some more detailed papers that would be publicly considered. Craig's going to give a bit of an overview of a bit more detail around the operating costs that was discussed on Tuesday and information of key components of that. In particular, he's going to work through, that part would be in open, then move into digital investments, which was an issue that was raised on Tuesday as well. That also we're proposing would be enclosed again. A number of elements of that relate to employee and contracts that we have externally. So at this point, suggesting that would be closed, but again would move into open if you provide some direction that those are matters that you want to drill in and make some specific decisions about. Then there was a conversation around water charges, and they was explicitly addressed in the resolution on Tuesday. Craig's going to talk to you around water charge price paths options, so just some discussion around that. And then just an overview of capital expenditure, and in particular just a high-level overview of bulk funds. There's been some discussion, so we've provided some material on that as an attachment. We don't propose moving into too much detail today. We've only got a couple of hours, but to give you a sense of what they are and the scale of them, and to get some guidance about, do you want to drill into all of them? Are there some particular ones where you'd like us to bring back some further information? So just an overview, and then trying to get some guidance about where you'd like to go to next on those bulk funds. So what we're proposing, some of them is a skim over the top to get some early direction about where you want to something more and what that something more would look like, and some others where we're seeking some sort of guidance around the next piece of work you would like us to prepare so we can bring that back for decision making. So if you're happy with that, Chair, we'd request that there's support to move into levels of service public excluded for the next part.
Okay. And public before we go into public excluded. Yeah. So we do, I think if we just have a high-level overview of what we're trying to do, because my understanding is this is one part of that.
Good morning, everyone. So, yeah, we can probably cover the 3 open agenda items and then come back to the 2 closed items, so slightly change the sequence. So the first of the open items is dealing with the operating costs, so item 2. And we've provided a table. And for the first time, this table goes back a little bit in time, so it picks up the financial impacts of the 2 resets that occurred in calendar 2025. In essence, there were 2 employee cost-saving reductions that total $12.5 million. And on a net basis, there was an additional $26.5 million of other cost savings to total $39 million. So, yeah, the 12.5 is the sum of the 11.4 and the 1.1. The 26.5 is derived by taking the gross amounts, and there's some net off due to revisions in the capital program, which impacts the debt, the level of interest, and the level of depreciation. So that's, if you like, the first or top half of the table. And then we move into the various adjustments that we discussed quite extensively on Tuesday. And essentially, this is quite useful framing. It tells us that to reach the target 7.5% rates increase, excluding Three Waters, we are trying to identify an additional $4.8 million of savings, whether it be through levels of service or potentially internal efficiencies. So I like the fact that through the workshops and this week's formal meeting, we're now at a point where there's some things to clarify, but in essence we've landed on a single item to solve, which I hope makes life more simple and straightforward for everyone. Yeah, so, and just to explain the 5.9, that's comprised of 4 parts. You might recall we had stormwater in there on Tuesday, so that's been pulled out because it is part of Three Waters. So that 5.9, just for clarity, comprises 2.7 of identified OPEX savings, a further 1.6 of targeted efficiency savings, 1.3 million from waste collection, and 0.3 million from user fees and charges. So, and the table excludes the possibility of a possible circa 2% debt retirement levy, which was also discussed. So I might pause there. I think that's the essence of this table and what it's telling us.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, you know, it is good to have this little breakdown and understanding a lot of that. Yeah, I'm just interested in depreciation and how that has changed. You know, there's nothing in here around that, but you know, we're going to under-deliver on our capital program by $80 million this year. So surely there's a depreciation impact next year.
So depreciation is a lagging expense. It only kicks in once a project is complete. So the so you'd have to look at which projects were due to complete in the current financial year and which are unlikely to do so. I think Susan did a little bit of analysis on that, and it came out at somewhere in the region of $500,000. So probably maybe not as much as you might think.
Okay. So that's not in here though. That's additional to what we've got here.
Yes, it would be. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like our I guess that's the other question, because this is what sort of caught us out last year. The depreciation that we have, the number that we have, are we confident on that, or is there going to be revaluations or additions or things? Is it going to be higher than we expect, or are we comfortable in our forecasting?
Depreciation is one of those things that you can only be comfortable with at a point in time. So at this point in time, I'm very comfortable with it. It has been forensically analysed. However, we are currently in February 2026. This is a plan that's starting in July 2027. So apart from the actual movement in the capital program, there are other things that will impact that number when we get there, once it's live 26, 27. Things such as the assumed useful lives, which are generally at a pretty high level when you're planning, but once it's componentised, that can change the dial quite a lot. We've got quite a lot of costs sitting in WIP at the moment, so when that ends up being capitalised, can change the dial a bit as well. So it is very, very much a moving feast.
And have we got any expected revaluations, for example, that are coming? Or
Yeah, we do plan for revaluation. This year we are revaluing, I think, parks assets and the airport mainly. So we have planned for that, but obviously experience tells us that what we plan for and what we actually get can be quite a long way apart.
Okay, right, no, thank you. Has anyone else got any questions on what we've seen there? All right, just a comment, and I know we're not there yet, but I'd like to see a little bit more detail around, the expected costs, like LTPs and forecasts and things like that, compared to, when we're talking total OPEX and annual plans and stuff, just so we have some context around what we're looking at from, what we're expecting, what are we looking at now, how does that compare to last year? Would be quite useful.
Happy to add that.
Yeah, Councillor Crowther.
Do we have consensus yet on, within the organisation, on the library numbers for this coming year and for FY28, in terms of the number of new staff, the number of those that are in the central library, and then the total costs for each of those financial years?
I know Sarah's looking at that. Sarah, how's progress on that?
We were planning to bring a paper to you that covers off what those new FTE had been planned for in the business case. But just to confirm, there are 9 roles for 27 and 9.8 roles for 27 and 4 roles for 28. We've just been going back and forth with the data to make sure it's all correct, and essentially that's the library, the new library, is 3 times the size of the existing library. There's a lot of space in there, and it's just about making sure there is coverage of staff through it. But we are going to get you a paper so that we can set out exactly what had been planned, what had been budgeted, and what the purpose of those roles.
Through the chair, when will the paper? I guess I thought that was coming today, so I'm just wondering when that is.
We can provide that as soon as we hadn't had it on the plan to provide it in a workshop today. Had assumed you wanted that in a council meeting.
My personal view is it'd be quite helpful given the discrepancy between the different numbers, just to know what we're talking about, because it doesn't have to be perhaps the final thing, but just, I mean, it is quite a obvious area that we need to look at, because it's generally thought of as maybe less impactful for an organisation to, in the short term, not employ someone as opposed to remove employed staff. You know, so that's sort of what we're putting it bluntly. That's the choice.
I suppose if you can give us some guidance, would you prefer it almost like a sort of a briefing paper that's circulated for information? Do you want it in a workshop, or do you want it to come to a formal meeting? So if we know that pathway, we can make sure it goes in the right place that you want.
I mean, for myself, I'd like the information as soon as possible through email, carrier pigeon, whatever, but the decision obviously comes to the council meeting. But I think we talked about the other day in March as opposed to sort of May or something like that. I think the idea is the sooner we, to Craig's point, the sooner we narrow down the options, the sooner you can go about finding out how much you have to save in addition to what we've already agreed to do.
If we circulate it as a paper, and then we'll just wait to get your guidance as to whether you want to actually have a session to discuss it, or whether you're comfortable with it going straight as we sort of had originally intended to a formal meeting. We're comfortable with whatever your guidance is.
Yeah, Councillor Curran.
Sarah, what is the relationship between staff and space? Because in my mind, it should be more around people in demand to therefore require extra resource. So what's the relationship between the two, space and staff?
I think that's why it's really important to go back to the original business case, and we can provide that to you. It's twofold in my mind. The new space, remember, has a lot of new areas for learning, for education and different programs of work. And there's also a safety issue. So we can't have open areas with no people in there just to keep the community safe. And as I said, this is nine planned FTE had been budgeted for 27 when that whole space opens up, and that covers both some shared services. There'll be more pressure on staff to be doing the work of the rates and providing all of that shared service that happens in a public-facing area, and then all manning all of the open areas and servicing the programs and the specific design of that building to activate community, students, and the programs that are in place.
Councillor Crowther.
Sarah, can you just clarify, like the business case with those numbers, was that completed before, the version you're talking about, completed before or after the, what do they call it, the value engineering and sustainability, I've forgotten all the phrases, you know, all these layers of things, which meant we have a much smaller building, because my understanding is the core library numbers are still based on conversations I've had with staff, are still based on the business case before the final value engineering designs were implemented. Can you confirm that?
No, I can't confirm the specific dates where different where the business case was signed. This is the importance of getting that paper to you that we are preparing.
I mean, the manager concerned knows we've had the discussion, so I think he'll get that.
Well, I think, yeah, we can ask for the report as soon as it's complete, and we can, you know, we can't make a decision until we get to a meeting anyway, so, but we can at least, at least get that out as quickly as we can. Is there any further questions just on that specific spreadsheet or attachment that we're talking about? Otherwise, we might move on to waters. No questions. That's easy. Sorry, just to make it very clear. So the 4.8 we're talking about at the bottom of that spreadsheet to get to 7.5. That's the number that we're looking for potentially out of this spreadsheet that we'll look at.
Correct, yes.
Okay, great. So now we'll move on to waters charges. We've got a attachment here. So I'm just, my first question really here is, you know, I think we're talking 25.6% in the numbers we saw on Tuesday, but here in the spreadsheet we're talking 12%.
That's correct. So drinking water versus three waters. So this is
This is three waters.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I'm happy to walk everybody through it.
Yep.
So yeah, the weighted average of increases across water, wastewater, and stormwater in the plan provided to DIA is 12% for the FY27 year, and that is substantially driven by a high, circa 25% increase on the water revenue side, and much lower increases in wastewater and stormwater. The reason it was done that way is the team here was solving to a target FFO. So assume people are familiar. Funds from operations. It's a cash-based surrogate for interest cover is probably the best way of explaining it. So in solving that way, it gave rise to that outcome across the three waters. Having tested that outcome and what drove that outcome, it would be possible to move to a glide path that softens the impact on water customers, as discussed on Tuesday. There are some implications, so we'd have to re-engage with both DIA and LGFA, which doesn't mean we can't, it just means we've got to step through a new process. So we can change the weightings. That's really the essence of this paper, is to say that if elected members view that circa 25% increase as too much of a one-year price shock, even though the weighted average is 12% across three waters, then adjustments can be made. So that's where this analysis takes us.
So where does the glide path option, what sort of increase are we talking?
Using the same methodology, it only decreases the water increase to 18%. So some may still consider that to be high.
So it's going from 25 to 18.
But we can still adjust further. It means you have a decrease in stormwater rather than an increase. Basically, the consumption of water is growing fast, and the wastewater and stormwater is flat in terms of profile. So, these things are all options, and I guess because there is a water bill as opposed to a rates bill, it's very stark. Yeah. So I guess that's the point here, isn't it?
Is there any implications around balanced budgets and things like that from this?
No, the main implication is on the ratios, the debt ratios, particularly FFO. But the advice we're getting from our Treasury team is that potentially can be managed even if we don't meet target in the next financial year.
But even for our total position at council, the balanced budget's not.
Yeah.
Yes, it's certainly a consideration. Obviously, a decrease in revenue is detriment to the balanced budget, detrimental. However, we are looking at decreasing our debt balances quite significantly as well through changes in the capital program. So probably on the scale of things, it probably won't matter that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Councillor Taylor.
The other day we spent a very long time talking about stormwater, and then when we came away I sort of started thinking about what was the actual quantum that it's going to cost the individual person paying those bills. Do we have any idea, if we knock it back to 18%, what does that actually mean in real terms to the median payer of these fees? Is it a significant amount, or are we talking $50 a year
You're
or something?
referring to drinking water or stormwater?
Oh, the whole. The big one, the 26% that we're trying to drag.
That's drinking water, yes. You have that, I think?
No, I don't have that. But just, again, as a matter of scale, knocking it back to, if you're not drinking water back down to 18%, it's a few $1 million on a total rating base of, including waters, of somewhere around 400 million. So it's probably not going to move the dial.
So,
After 3 years, it's not going to be in-house. It's not going to be part of the equation.
Yeah, mathematically less than 1%.
but I don't think it's to your point, I don't think the median waters bill is like, I don't want to, 500-600, I think. So we're probably talking $100 ish. Yeah, Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this. I think it's really helpful. I like the glide path option. I like the thinking on it. I don't think it, given what you said, Tracy, I think that's exactly right. Like we'll have different pressures going in different directions, and it will even it out a bit. I guess when I see the 6%, I'm now going to argue it's too low, in the sense that, to me, the simplest thing and the thing that would send the clearest message to our community would be to say, well, this year we'll do it the same as the overall rates increase of 7.5%, and you can then back engineer that and keep the water increase as low as possible. So if you got to 18 and you're comfortable with that, I believe it's 15 in the LTP, like 14 point whatever, so around 15. So if we're at 3% more for that, but in return we're delivering a lower overall increase in waters, and we're delivering a lower increase in rates, to me we've probably got the balance about right, and that messaging would be really clear and saying this year, you know, it's just, there's no complexities, we're not hiding anything, it's all 7.5, and then from now on these two things are going to diverge on different pathways, and we've got a water services delivery plan that in future years, once we launch the CCO a year later, that will have its own trajectory, and then the rates will have its own, and I think that would be really clear communications.
Yeah, in this table, you said 15%, the LTP year 3 increases 12%.
So just, I was meaning 15 for drinking water only, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, as opposed to you're saying it's 18 now, as part of that 6%,
yes.
The water would be 18, and then the others would be static or whatever. To be explicit, don't put any of the extra, the difference between 6 and 7.5, don't put any of that into water, put it into, well, my preference would be stormwater, but maybe wastewater if we need it.
Okay, so if we're obviously not making decisions here, but we're going to give some direction. Are we comfortable at looking at a glide path option? Is that people are comfortable with that? Okay, so we'll look at a glide path option, and that will come back for a decision at a future meeting. People comfortable with Councillor Crowther, we keep it 7.5? Yeah. Okay, that's a good direction. So now if we go to the capital projects carry forwards.
Yeah, so this topic, we're just going to cover off some of the follow-up items from Tuesday. And Susan's prepared a one-pager, best viewed in A3, I think, but there's a few topics on there, and I think a verbal update on the bulk funds. Just to quantify that, the current level of bulk funds is less than 20 million of 400 odd million, so probably less than 5% of the total, just to put those funds into perspective. But I'll pass to Susan.
Yes, so hopefully you all received that attachment last night. Just to talk you through, there was obviously the decision a couple of days ago that we've set this 450 mil limit now for the 27 financial year, which was very helpful for us to have that envelope set now. But I thought it might be helpful to share the iterative process that we go through for CapEx rephasing as we flow into an annual plan, which impacts both the current financial year and the kind of domino effect onto next year's program. So in the corporate planning model back in September, October last year, there was a very extravagant capital program in the 27 financial year, over 630 million. That was mostly just the deferral of projects from 25. Yeah, it's just being dumped into that year. So we thought, oh, we really need to have a look at that year, and we managed to get it down to around 500 million, just based on common sense, what could actually be delivered. So that was what has recently been presented to you based on November numbers. Just noting that our corporate planning model currently shows around 480 million in the current financial year. Now we know based on the most recent forecast data that we're trending more towards a sort of $400 to $415 million spend this financial year. So we really want to get a bit more accuracy in our corporate planning system so we can let those interest and depreciation impacts flow through correctly for annual plan purposes. So in the material that's been circulated just recently, we have identified $58 million worth of projects that they are just deferred for. So there's Tauranga West contingencies, wharf constructions, arterial route reviews, Bay Park master planning. They are at a point in the process that we can actually defer $58 million that is currently sitting in the model. There is still a question mark around those $40 million worth of projects which I circulated to you all last week for feedback. And I guess, so looking at that green column in the table, what we're wanting to do next week is to actually go into the system and update all of these assumptions. So I've kind of set out some estimates as to where we're likely to land, so we should be able to rework the 26 budgets to sit somewhere in the region of 400 and 450 million, and start framing up what next year's budget is actually going to deliver. Obviously the benefits of doing this as early as we can is to help set out what the expectations are, and what the community is expecting us to deliver on. We're not going to have these huge carry forward surprises at year end that's then going to bump a whole load of things we thought we could afford into 2028. And then we will of course be able to do a couple more iterations before we formally adopt. So we'll do a Q3 update based on where we are more likely to land by year end, and then just any final wash-ups through the deliberations process, any last minute tweaks we need to make to the program, and then there will obviously be the usual year end wash-up carried out in sort of July, August, which we would just apply that dollar in, dollar out approach, similar to what we've done this financial year. So I guess it's just to get everyone on the same page that this financial year, you've probably got in the back of your mind, it was only a $20 million carry forward that we had to deal with. But actually, if you looked at the variance between what we had set out in the LTP year one and what we actually delivered, because of this iterative approach to carry forward as we prep the 26 annual plan, it probably reduce that down from about 100 million to 20 million as the final wash up.
So
Hopefully.
I just had a question on that. So I don't understand, where we prioritise these plans, and then, you just talked about the carry forwards. There seems to be that actually when we get to the next year and we're looking to carry forward, we go, actually, well, that's not really a priority. I don't understand how one year it was so important that it was in the capital program, and the next year it can be actually we don't need to do that anymore.
A lot of these are multi-year projects, so it does have a flow-on effect. It's kind of where we're up to in the delivery of that program that then just bumps along, and but ultimately there are some decisions to be made, particularly in that $40 million worth of projects list that we do need to kick some things along. We're not going to be able to afford them with this lower cap.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I have just highlighted that part of the table.
Yeah, I just don't understand how they were so important to be in the program, and now we can, because we've got less to spend, suddenly they become less important. I would have thought that basically 100% of carry forwards, because they were prioritised over the projects that were going to be done this year. So you would have thought 100% of carry forwards would automatically go through, and then it's the...
Bearing in mind there are there's contingencies baked into those, so where we can actually give up some contingency spend.
Yeah.
We have also given up chunks of, for example, Cameron Road Stage 1. There was a budget provision in there that we've not needed to utilise, so we've given that up as savings.
Yeah.
Renewals projects, if they aren't fully delivered, unless there is something very specific that needs to be completed, we typically don't allow the carry forwards to happen. We just let that budget slide and start with the fresh pot of money in the following financial year.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what would be helpful today to get some direction for the teams next week in putting these updates into the corporate planning model is that 40 million, so I've had 4 responses back to that spreadsheet sent out last week, whether we are all comfortable that is this next draft annual plan, we can defer those projects and have them on this bring forward list for manipulation next year if other projects slow and we've got capacity to bring things forward. That would be the main thing today.
Well, the other aspect, I think, is whether elected members think there are projects above the envelope level that they would have preferred to have been within the envelope. So there's that question as well. Because once you impose an envelope cap or ceiling, the ones at the cusp may or may not be interchangeable. So I guess that needs to be thought through as well.
Okay. Councillor Crowther?
Does your system give you any insight from the different numbers for FY27, what it's then looking like in 28 in terms of how much... Like, I'm just wondering what the quantum of the cut would have to make from the LTP CapEx number in order to keep the, like, we've got sort of like a 4% rates increase we sort of supposedly have to do, but we've got 2 years to kind of explain why we can't. So there'll be downward pressure there. There'll be this issue of trying to sequence all the projects right. So do you sort of have a clear enough visibility to kind of go, are we going to have say a similar kind of repeat process next year that'll be probably the same quantum of having to sift it out of the plan, or will it be worse, or will it be easier?
When we do these multi-year project updates, we do look at the phasing beyond just the 27 financial year, so we do try to get it as accurate as we possibly can, but so we should be able to get a fairly strong sense of what rating impact then that flows through over the longer term, yes.
But projects that are in year 1 of the next LTP, year 1, 2 and 3, if they're not carried forward projects or projects that were well underway or growth, because we would do them for growth because it flows into the DC calc, they won't have been reviewed since the last LTP, and so that's the process we'll start working through this calendar year. So those numbers aren't reliable from that perspective, and we'll be looking at things like unit rates and our risk methodology and a contingency methodology. That'll all be part of the LTP review process.
No, I just think just trying to get a feel, I guess, of because what we do this year, the consequences of that, because even though we haven't done the LTP, we've still got a straw man option, kind of, that we can
take it that there's always a bow wave, you always keep pushing out, and that's where the LTP comes in. You're just going to say, actually, that we're going to have to refine that, and that's a whole new decision-making process. So I think I wouldn't worry about what year one of the LTP is. It's going to be, you're going to set a new envelope, you're going to set new direction about what you want to achieve, and then that will drive that whole process. And we'll give updated numbers and updated why are some projects more important than others, because the world's changed since we did it 3 years ago. Yeah.
Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the spreadsheets. Lovely. My personal view is we take a similar view that we took to the CapEx project. We've got to find approximately, 4.85 million out of the projects just to squeeze it down a bit. If we just reduce the 40 to 35 as a starting point and then do a one in, one out based on projects. So if a project comes along, because what I'm very mindful of is if we don't agree to proceed with the waters on the 2nd of April, it's going to turn this whole discussion upside down. So it's not much use us spending an hour here discussing 1 or 2 projects, and then we don't agree on the 2nd of April to form a water CCO. This is all going to have to come back and revisit this whole discussion, because it's going to change how we work out our annual plan. Is that a correct statement?
It won't make any difference. Because waters is in either way that for 27. Yeah.
Some would have to rethink about so at the moment we've got a waters project budget to deliver on moving to a waters organisation by 1 July 27, but in terms of the CapEx and OPEX, the day-to-day running of waters, that doesn't change, because under both models it sits in TCC for 26, 27. So it's only if we're not doing a waters organisation, then we're into building an in-house model, and that will have some costs. But you're in the, it's not in the large scheme. It will be rethink a budget, but everything else stays the same. You don't start to drive your efficiencies and your cost changes until year one of the water organisation, which is 2027-28, year one of the LTP.
So do we need feedback on this 40 million, the spreadsheet?
Yes, so far I've had feedback on Central Plaza Wharf, Domain Road and Badminton, I think, the 3 projects that have been called out as possibly needing to form part of that. So it would slide outside of that prioritisation score and ranking system that we'd set out. So I guess collectively, if that is the direction, is to include those, and so tweaking the prioritisation scoring.
Councillor Crowther.
I ask just for some clarification around the wharf that was mentioned in the agenda thing today. I'm just trying to understand, like, with our obligations with the Marine Precinct and wharfs and so forth, like the sequencing there, given we haven't, like, we've still got to have our meeting with the fishing and black boats people, because I understand there's a difference of view between our consultant and that community. But once that gets sort of worked through and we make whatever decision we make, do we have any contractual issues in terms of deferring whatever the chunk is to the following year? Because my understanding is there's sort of like a good faith time frame there that we're working for, and I'm just wanting to really be clear that there's no gap between the finance team and whoever the team is who's working on the contract there, that we don't run ourselves short, or the opposite, that we suddenly have to add some more to the capital program.
So, Susan, we're talking about the Wharf Street Wharf, aren't we, as opposed to the other wharfs? I know what you're talking about, Councillor Crowther.
Sorry, I was introducing another thing. Like, in addition to that, I'm just talking about the there's something in the table as well on, like, on the other wharf as well, eh? I'll have to find it.
So as part of that 58 million that was identified, that could be deferred, there was, for the Marine Precinct alongside Wharf, there had, in the current corporate planning system, there was 10.4 million sitting in the 27-year budget, and that has now been phased across 2 years just based on where things are at in terms of the planning. So
I guess my question to Marty, like, has that been integrated between the different parts of council? Are we confident that's a precautionary approach to take?
We're currently going through a resource consent process for the development of the Marine Precinct wharf and wharves. It'll depend on that as to when construction starts, but I think probably we need to dive into that and just revisit that. I would have thought 2027 we could be starting to spend significant money on the development of that wharf, and so we just need to make sure that we've got sufficient in there.
Yep, Councillor Taylor.
So on the subject, there was 2 or 3 of us sent in emails to you, Susan, just saying we don't really think we're qualified to probably to make some of these decisions, and that we should leave it to staff. So my question is to the rest of the team: are they happy with that approach, or are we, you know, if we're going to get people making selections, then I think we should all be involved with it. But if we can leave it to staff, well, I'm happy with that decision. So I'd like to get some feedback from the other EMs.
I'm with you, Rob.
I think there's got to be a political view on it, and that's where the staff's job, I guess, is to take the prioritisation that we've sort of given them around what is important and what is not, and come back to us, and our job is to then give feedback whether that meets our expectations really or not.
If that's the case and there's appetite for that, then I don't think we've had the appropriate vehicle to do that properly yet, and I'd be concerned some stuff would slip through because people are hell-bent on pushing it.
Yeah.
Where we haven't had a group discussion about individual projects, and that's not going to be a 5-minute job, I wouldn't think. So I just want clarity on, are we leaving it to staff to make these decisions, or are we actually going to get donkey down and get into it? And
well, I think it's really a discussion. Do we want to go line by line, or do we want to set the parameters as to what is important, and have them come back and us to look at it from an overall, and as sort of Craig suggested, maybe we're saying actually overall we're quite comfortable with that direction, but these are a couple of projects we'd really like to see delivered, and these are probably a couple of projects that we don't feel like are important. So, yeah.
Just a suggestion, what you could do is do similar to what you've done with the level of service. If the 40 list, if you each fill in to say, are there any specific projects that you want to have a conversation on? So not go through every single one, just the ones that you think you want to, and there might be 3 or 4 that collectively a number of you are saying the same thing as becomes transparent. Through that, then we could bring those ones back. It's one way of speeding up the process to get input.
to be fair, Jeremy offered us that this week, and that's when these emails came back to Susan saying, we don't think we're qualified to actually make these calls.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, I think there is a political lens on it, because if our staff decide that delivering Cameron Road Stage 2 happens, we have to be comfortable that is the view that we have, and we can't come back in a meeting when they're saying we're going to renew Hopakarori and we're going to say, oh, actually we don't like that, because we don't think it needs to be done. So that's where the political lens is. So if we're going to go down that track, we can't come back on any project and say we don't actually think that's important. So this is our opportunity now to have that discussion.
Yeah, I agree, and I understand what you're saying, but we've been mucking around with this thing for probably 6 months, where we could have looked at the list, got in a room for a day and done it, but we haven't done that. People have
Yeah.
done things individually. So I'm really wanting some guidance on
Yeah.
how we're going to affect this and make it do a good
Councillor
job.
Crowther.
Yeah, when I'd asked that at one point, I was told there'd be a workshop, and I thought this was the workshop. I thought this is where we could ask the questions. Is this not the workshop where we can ask questions?
No, I think, like, I still believe in what we've been asking for is having a real, capital prioritisation framework that effectively we plug everything in and that just spits out the projects ranked. Like, I'm still not sure I haven't seen how that's been done, but
So that's the spreadsheet that was sent out last week, and it was presented in the workshop last week. So the 40 million list that has been prioritised out because of that cap of 400 mil.
yeah. But
Those were
where's,
the ones that were ranked most low.
I guess that is probably the missing link there. I get that, but the missing link is what was the framework, what were the criteria, how was that done? Because that's like we had a workshop last year about it, but then we haven't seen the model. I don't know what the what's the weightings of the priorities, what were done. So
it was based on 70% risk and 30% outcomes, and the outcomes were weighted evenly.
So what were the outcomes?
Community outcomes that were signed off. So you passed resolutions approving the outcomes. You made a change on one by adding events in, and so that's what you said as outcome priorities. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen. So I haven't seen the matrix. Yeah, sorry.
Well, this is the issue I raised with us in our, private discussion that we'd had a week or so ago. Like, I'll say it publicly. Like, I actually prefer the staff weighting that they gave to our community outcomes. So I know that may not be the consensus, but I think at some point, because we were in this halfway house where we're doing equal weightings, we get distorted outcomes here. And so I think the staff have done exceptionally well, but they've got, was it the exec or senior leadership, whoever it was who did the ratings, I actually prefer those. I think they accept the community understanding, would be far more in alignment with our senior management than with what we're doing. So I struggle with this on that basis, but given that we're doing equal weighting, the staff have done the absolute best they can, have gone through, I think, a much more robust process than often has taken place to sort of whittle it. So the question is, can we change that at this point? If we can, I'll be pushing to use the senior leadership or whoever, is it exec? Whatever, whoever it was who rated it, they did a good job, I thought. But we're not doing that, and all this paper would have to be redone to get those weightings. And we're now getting to the point where I think the timing is pretty critical. And I just think it's better just to go through and, to actually ask questions on the specific projects, get some clarity, and figure out if, most importantly, are we leaving out anything that we can't afford to leave out?
Well, the only question I was going to ask, Susan, how difficult would it be to run it with the other weightings, and then what's the likely difference and change in what's currently presented? Or is that $1 million question?
It's all been set up as a matrix. It's easily changeable. We can change the weightings, and the click of a button we can see what then would drop out. I guess it is going to be quite time critical getting all these changes into the system next week, so you may not necessarily have immediate visibility of what's going to drop out.
And regardless of doing that or not doing that, ultimately it does need that political critique and lens. Precisely, it's a political sense test of what's in and what's out, and what should be in and what could come out.
So I think we need to have a session, and that's probably what we're missing at the moment, is have a session and going through some of that, and like I haven't, I need to go and have another look around exactly. I didn't understand how the matrices all worked and how it all spat those projects out. Need to have a better look at that. I saw the list, but yeah, I think we need to understand that, and then that's when we can make a decision. Is the matrix right? That spat the numbers out, and does that give us the results that we actually want, or is there a well, yeah, but you set up a framework and it spits it out, and then does that align to our views or not? And if not, then we need to change the weightings. So I think we do need to have a session on it. Yeah, Martin.
Thanks, Matt. No, mine's, along with Councillor Taylor, having done some of this before, your CapEx renewal program is kind of dependent on everything that happens before it. So if a project gets delayed or weather gets in the way and it gets pushed, another project gets pushed and gets pushed. So playing around in the CapEx renewal space is a bit of a challenge, but your CapEx growth space, when we decide to start a new project, for example, to meet a growth, that's where we can have a better input as to can we actually afford to do it now, or have we got some renewals programs that we have to be prioritised over meeting our growth requirements. So I think focusing on our CapEx growth from a political lens of the memorial pool, new open reserve space, new treatment plants, that kind of stuff, the big CapEx projects is where we need to focus and where we're going to plug them into how we're going to pay for them. Because the CapEx renewal program as a whole complete entity, the staff will be very good at attributing when they can start a project and when they can't. And if a project gets kicked and it's the key project of a renewal sequence and it doesn't quite go in line with the sequence, it's going to get bumped into the following year. And those are the ones I would like to see prioritised because they're part of a sequence of projects. And I'm assuming those ones get prioritised over other projects. So staying out of that space, I think that could get chewy to go through. But doing the CapEx renewal growth projects, that's where we can have the most input, in my view.
Right, is there anything else on this part? Councillor Grother?
Can we ask a couple of specifics?
Yep.
One of them is, just want to be clear on the Mount College pool, just especially because Council School is not here. I know she'd be interested. Like, we'd had a bit of an internal discussion trying to understand. Oh, is she online? Oh, sorry. Does that have implications in terms of the project to prioritise out that amount of money in that project? So we've got an FY26 number and FY27, and I'm just trying to understand what that means for that project. Does it mean the whole thing's delayed? Does it mean it's a timing of our contribution? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I met with those responsible for delivering it last week and gave an undertaking that we were committed to proceeding with this as previously planned, subject to a couple of things being tidied up. And it was our intention to try and have that wrapped up by the end of this week. It may be early next week that we we wrap that up, but that would be proceeding as planned on the basis that I signed that. And there was a bit of a check-in, check-up on this one, but we can continue to have the conversation if you wish.
But I don't know if it is as planned because they were expecting to be in the ground now. So
no, it still is. It still is as planned. I think Marty, as backing up very much, Marty has got the process as it is. There was just a little bit of delay in getting some of the MOE, I think, conversations happening, and so they are waiting for Marty to do that final sign-off, and then they'll order the pool. Yeah. But so I got an update. Thanks for raising it, Glenn. I got an update that the spreadsheet was done as at a month before that had been confirmed, so it wasn't yet committed, but it will need to move into committed.
Yes, so that one would have featured in that 40 mil uncommitted. That would drop out. So if we are now saying this has been committed, then it's going to be the next thing on the list is going to to drop out when we present the next draft. Yeah.
Then my other one was, I guess, going to a very small scale. There's some money for 13 bus shelters in Tauranga. Is that just dropping out because there are no houses there and it's in Tauranga West or something like that? Or is it, do we know if there's any, I guess I'm just wondering, because we did have some FAR for delivering bus shelters. I don't think we had much, but I would hate to think that we've got a potential funding assistance rate contribution, and in our last year of the training, and we're not going to deliver it.
We can follow up on that, but that might be, if it's Tauranga West, then then it's obviously that development's slower than everyone expected, and we can find out. But this is why
business estate really is what I'm thinking.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why it is important, I think, to go through that capital program workshop where these questions can be asked. We understand the reasons why something might be moved out or not committed or is committed, and have the program managers present.
And that one there, it's only $200,000 we're talking, so it's, yeah.
Which is all the more reason if we get it half funded and it's not just for some empty non-existent streets, then I'd like it to be there. But if it is just for the subdivision, and which has progressed slowly, then that's totally different.
Right. Any other questions on that? So I think the action out of that is we want another session on the capital program. So, yeah.
Like to Susan's point, the bottom one on the other sheet, Blake Park Reserve Development. I mean, we might as well sort of cover off that in general. Is there someone who can speak to how important the timing is? If that's the one that now drops off, do we need to commit whatever the total is for the next financial year to keep that on track, or is that something that can be delayed to the following year? Not sure whose area it is.
The Blake Park master plan is improvements. We can not do some of the improvements. Having said that, some of that is committed, so it won't be an all shift.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, is there any other issues to be dealt with in public?
One, which is just the bulk funds, if you want to just talk about those. So we've provided you, I'm just trying to find it, attachment 1, page 6 of the agenda. This is the list of all of the bulk funds. As Craig said, it's sort of circa 20 million. This was done prepped prior to your Tuesday meeting, and in the Tuesday savings, and also in the level of service conversations we have later on, some of these are in the mix to be reduced. But the idea here was just to give you an overview of all the elements that make them up. Happy if you want to do a deeper dive into any of them. We have talked that there was some in particular that you were interested in understanding. How do projects get onto the list? How are they prioritised? And what's sitting in the list outside of the current funded envelope that are not able to be done because they're a lower priority. You particularly talked about that for transport safety improvement, so we have got that as a piece of work we need to do. But whether there are any other ones, and we could bring them, we could have a discussion as a bundle of bulk funds, or if that's the only one that you want to dive into a little bit deeper, then we could either do a memo on that or cover it in a workshop or a briefing. Stormwater one, we remember we're going to bring a report back on all of that as a package. So yes, that was discussed on Tuesday. So yep, so you're right. So yes, stormwater we've given it, we've said yep, that's one you wanted to look at, and transport minor safety works was one that you had indicated that you wanted to look at. think, was there any other transport? It was just that one, Renica, minor safety, I think.
The Transport Minor Works, we had a workshop or presentation to Council to explain our prioritisation methodology and how we have rapid deployable projects in there that are driven mainly by community sentiment as well as safety assessments on the basis of feedback. It's lots of smaller projects that have a significant backlog. You can lower the level of the bulk fund and the backlog will simply grow.
I think we've spoken about the public art framework, but yeah, I'm guessing that's one for some opportunity. I'm just, again, is that budget, that's not adjusted, is it, to the...
No, that currently doesn't have savings, but that was one that was identified for potential savings. So,
Yeah,
so
but that hasn't been adjusted for some of the decisions we've made either, has it?
I don't think so, anyway.
Just that the city centre historical and cultural precinct, I'm interested in what that 1.1 relates to for that particular financial year. So that's 8. Yeah, thank you.
Did you want me to answer a specific question on that one? I didn't quite catch what the question was. I'm really sorry.
No, I was just curious about the sort of breakdown of the 1.1, because I know there are a number of quite cool sort of projects around that, but I'm just interested in the sequencing and what's realistic there in terms of if any of that can be delayed, etc.
What we currently have as prioritised projects in there are access improvements from the north of the Strand, the Monmouth Redoubt, including the pedestrian part of Cliff Road. There is the interpretation plan and signage wayfinding that Council signed off almost a year ago. And then there is some master planning of the Cliff Road Reserve area. Does that make sense to everyone?
In the play AIP, there's no detail on that.
Sorry, the play AIP? The FY27 programme for that specific one is coming to the City Delivery Committee already. I believe that's the one next week or the week after, so you'll get that before.
What is play AIP?
Oh, sorry. So that is the renewals, the network analysis of the full play infrastructure, so all the playgrounds that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, that we prioritise that based on public feedback. So we talk to people about their playgrounds and where they want them. They are then reviewed by council and put in a programme that generally comes to the City Delivery Committee. Indicatively, we have consulted on, and for you to prioritise on, Simpson Reserve, Hopekuri and Sydenham Lees in the Brookfield area.
Right. Any other questions on that? Yep.
Can I just acknowledge, I don't know if he's ever been acknowledged publicly, but Barry Scott for I really like the Playground Shade program, which staff have developed, and that's all come about, to my understanding, from Barry and a bunch of people in Papamoa, some of the Papamoa Residents Association and other people there who'd got together, saw the need for young people in their community to have protection from the sun, and so I think that's a really cool project or program until the trees grow big enough to shade playgrounds.
Yeah, thank you. There will be some carryovers for a few of those shade programs, including Hopekuri and the Papamomea playground, I believe.
All right, if that's all the questions we have in public, then I call for a mover and seconder to go into publicly excluded. Oh yeah, we'll just go, sorry, into